Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing today? I am Professor Simon Begi Koza. I'm teaching this module, which is a curriculum module for B.Ed students with Dr. Lokesh Maharaj, as you can see us in the picture there. So the issue for today, or the topic for today, is curriculum and pedagogy in developing country context. So this is chapter 2 of your prescribed book that you need to read, and then you listen to this recording. And then when you do that, you then be able to address the issues that will be asked in terms of your assessment. So our assessment has some different tasks that will need you, that will need your attention. Therefore, read the book thoroughly and then listen to the recording. The recordings will guide you as well in terms of how you may simplify what you are doing. To simplify it, you may read the recording. You might just view the recording. So what then is happening in South Africa? In South Africa, our country is divided into two. It has the category called a developing section of the country. It also has a developed part of it, which is developed country. So South Africa is represented into two. You may represent it in terms of developing country. At the same time, you may also identify it as a developed country. Why do you say that? Because look at our schools. From 1658, when our first school or first curriculum was introduced in South Africa, in Cape Town, the curriculum was divided in two approaches. We had the competence-based approach and the performance approach. So these categories were clear because even today you can see the element of that we still have about 80% of our schools, approximately 80% of our schools are under-resourced. These are no-fee schools, lower performance, and also these are poor schools that are running short of resources. Resources may be human resource or technical resource, whatever category that is fitting that definition for that particular time. Then at the same time, we have about 20% of our schools that are identified as well-resourced schools. Those were ex-Model C schools. So these schools, that approximately 20%, are representing South Africa as a developed country, while that 80% are representing South Africa as that developing country. Then when you move to higher education, our higher education is categorized into three. We have TVET colleges, which is technical vocational education and training. Then we also have universities, and we have universities of technology. Our universities are also divided into 5 research-intensive universities. These are universities that represent South Africa as a developed country, because if you can look at them there, they are ranked higher there in the world because they are, look at UCT, look at VETS, so these are rankings for over 22,000 universities in the world. So if your country has universities that are up to this level, it means those universities are representing your country as a developed country. But if our universities, if none of them is part of the top 500 or top 2,000 universities in the world, therefore we may clearly be identified as the developing country. But for now, we have 2. There are universities that are not in the top 2,000 rankings, but there are those that are also in there are up there. Therefore, we have these two categories. So in South Africa, then you can see that when we have 20% of schools that are well-resourced, those are taken from what we had since 1958 as the performance curriculum. But then when we have those that are operating with that 80% which are under-resourced, they are following what we identified as competence-based curriculum. So others will tell you that it's outcomes-based, but the original term, it was competence-based curriculum, because the people were talking about competencies that are achieved by using everyday knowledge or imitating people. Then you produce that as the competence. So mastering competencies were the issues that were, those competencies were a big deal in terms of our education. So when you see then the 5 research-intensive university were designed to accommodate the 20% of schools, so that these students here who are performing high here will go straight to the research-intensive universities. And then the 80% may be distributed among these other sectors. It can be to TVET colleges if they have poor results or poor marks. And then they can go to universities of technology. Then they can also go to comprehensive universities. But we have 26 universities in South Africa where we are combining research-intensive university, comprehensive university, as well as universities of technology. Those are the categories that we have. So let me give you an example. Then how then do you negotiate your way in terms of going to these institutions? You need to decide here, if you have high marks, so you are talking about 90s, maybe 80s, so in your matric, then it's then easy then to negotiate your way through and then just go straight to these research-intensive university. They may even give you bursary. But today, even these research-intensive universities are taking students you find that, for example, UKZN has about 78%, approximately 78% of its students from under-resourced schools. So, which means it's now bringing other categories, not only from 20%, but it's also drawing from the 80%. So that's what is happening there. So, but then you decide here, for instance, if you want to become a mechanical engineer, if you want to fix cars, it's simple. You go to TVET college, so that when the cars need to be penetrated, you are there because you learn there. They'll teach you how to become a penetrator. Then all what you do, you just follow the method of fixing the car. If you have to fix that car, you'll just follow that. So you don't have to design the method of fixing it, but you use the method available to you that was designed by other people. Therefore, when you become that mechanical engineer from TVET college, you don't have to design, you just have to fix. But if you decide to go to University of Technology, University of Technologies are designed so that when the designers of those cars, they will design sitting in their big offices there. When they are sitting there in their big offices, they will draw these, design them, and send it to these company cars. So when they are there, then that's when then you will then see those from University of Technologies waiting there, waiting for those cars. What they'll do, they'll just order relevant material and assemble them nicely. And then the car will have to go out of those companies when the cars are out, when they need to be fixed after they've been assembled, then they'll get someone from the TVET college. But now who is designing this is someone from the university. So those students who are going to university like you are at university level because you are forced to learn how to design. Whatever you do, you must be able to design. So you are there to learn to design. You sit wherever you are and then design. For example, I don't expect a university student going to school during teaching practice or when they've completed their degree and then going there and ask other people to say, can you give me a lesson plan template? No, you don't do that. But if you were trained by colleges, yes, you can do that, because what you are expecting is that university teachers who graduated from universities will always design lesson plan. When they design these lesson plans, they are designing them for you because you were taught to assemble or to fix. When you fix, you just follow a designed lesson plan designed by other people. That's what you do there. But coming from university, the expectation is that you learn how to design, and you must be able to design your own lesson plan, which will influence other people. That's what is happening with these categories. You go to TVET college, you will learn how to fix things, and then you go to University of Technology, you will learn how to assemble whatever is given to you by university graduate, the engineers from university or the graduate from university. But you go to university, you learn how to design. So that is the given. That's why you have three categories, that you can't be a mechanical engineer, but you need to decide where do you want to be in terms of this higher education, which is divided into three categories. So what is then the difference between research-intensive university and comprehensive university is that research-intensive university start with a degree. So in other words, when you come with your matric, you will start by the first qualification that you will acquire is a degree. But whereas universities of comprehensive universities, they may start you with, if they see that no, your results are weak, they must start you with a diploma. They may take you a level down. But the 5 research-intensive universities in South Africa are not allowed to do that. Which one are those? Here are the 3 universities, the research-intensive universities in South Africa. You have Stellenbosch University, you have UCT, you have UKZN, you have University of Pretoria, you have Wits University. So those are the 5 research-intensive universities that represent South Africa as a developed country. But whereas others will then present South Africa as a developing country. So you have those, and then more of those comprehensive universities are appearing here. So you will see in this PowerPoint when you go to your LAN 2021. And then what is wrong then with what we have as the 2 approaches of curriculum or pedagogy? These 2 have been competing since 1658 in South Africa, when the first curriculum, which was divided into 2, that you had the content-centered curriculum, which was called traditional curriculum, which was capable of addressing the question of what we do. So all what they had in that part of curriculum, everything was prescribed there. But then we also had another one, which was called competence-based curriculum. The competence-based curriculum or outcomes-driven curriculum or learner-centered curriculum. So that one was designed for Black in South Africa in 1658. But this one, the content center one, was designed for white in South Africa. So it was divided, that curriculum was divided into two. So the one that is outcomes-based was about answering or addressing the issue of how things are happening. So what was the reason for that is that professionals who were coming from the content-centeredness were expected to do the job, and those from the outcomes-based, which is from the competence-based curriculum, they were expected to imitate what those from performance curriculum were doing. So now, when they were doing that job, it was easy to work under them for many years. Then you master certain competencies. That's why it's called competence-based curriculum. Once you master those competencies, it was easy for the company that you were working for to take you to Olifantsfontein in Gauteng, where you were then asked to perform a test, a competence test, and then you were given a trade or a crafts, a trade diploma. You were given a trade diploma. Irrespective whether you had grade 1 or grade 2 or grade, as long as you were able to imitate the professionals who were coming from formal higher education institution, it was easy to give you that trade certificate. But you couldn't design. All what you were still doing is just to follow them, follow what these professionals were doing. So in other words, you were trained to become handymen. So what then is happening then in our situation right now? In our situation, taken from that long history started in 1658, is that our curriculum is still divided into two competing systems. The first one is the one that we define as a plan for teaching, which is the traditional or teacher-centeredness. We call that, when we define that curriculum, is called a plan for teaching because we have a specific document that you need to follow. It's prescribing to you that the resources that you need to use, the content that you have to teach, everything is prescribed. All what you do, you just follow the steps. You follow the steps as they are. You follow the prescribed activities as they are. But when you go back to, so this was happening up until 1998. 1998, we had another category where we started to practice the competence-based curriculum now, which was called our Curriculum 2005. And then the approach there was outcomes-based approach, which is outcomes-based curriculum. They gave it that term, outcomes-based education, but it meant it was taken from competence-based curriculum. So these two giants have been competing since 1658, but in 1998, so there was a demand in South Africa that no, we need to move now from the content-centered approach to this one called Curriculum 2005. So the first one which we were using then, it was called Christian National Education. Then the following one, then it was then Curriculum 2005, which was taking us to the how part of it. There were outcomes that were prescribed for us so that everyone in South Africa had to achieve those outcomes. Whenever you offer a course, you make sure that you drive your learners to achieve those outcomes. So it's following what professionals were doing this side to these who were working under the competence-based curriculum. So what these are doing, they have steps, they've designed something. So this side, they had to follow those steps. So then what happened then in 1998, South Africa moved, pushed away the Christian National Education to Curriculum 2005, which was outcomes driven. So because that Christian National Education, it was content driven. So when we define curriculum, then remember when people start to define curriculum, there's no one way or there's no one definition of defining curriculum, but it's safer to say when you define curriculum, try to define it as a plan for teaching. If you define it as a plan for teaching, you are saying you are talking about the content centeredness, because it's a plan for teaching. It's a document that will follow in your teaching. So we call it's a plan for teaching. Whereas if we take it from the opposite, which is outcomes driven, we call that it's a plan of learning, because we use experience of learners to learn. Let me give you an example. If I were to teach my learners how to create a table using any application software, I will first, as a teacher, have prescribed activities. The first activity that I need, it's a table, it's an example of a table that I'll give to the learners to do. Number two, I need steps to be followed in designing a table using that specific, using a specific program or software, application software. So here's the example. I take that I will be designing this table. I'll be helping my learners to design this table using Microsoft Excel. We all know what Microsoft Excel is. So what I'll do then, I'll look for the table that was internationally designed using Microsoft Excel. I will have that, I'll print that so that I'll give it to my learners when I go to the class. Number two, I need step by step. Those steps will represent the content of how to do the table. So I need those. And then I need resources, which in this case, I need computers that will be used by these learners. Then my objective here is to make sure that learners understand the design of curriculum. You see, I've prescribed, these things are prescribed. All what I need to do, I have to search for them wherever they are published. I'll search for them. I'll search for the model of a table. I'll search for the steps. I'll search the program that was used. If it is Excel, I'll look for the steps using Excel. And then I will take those three things with me. The first one is the model of the table. Number two, I should have Excel program in those computers that I'll be using. Number three, I have the steps. When I come to the class, I'll just tell the learners to say, learners, today we have to produce this table as the objective of the lesson. So all what we do will follow step by step. I'll tell them, click that, click that, click that. So I'll give them instruction. instruction. That's why it says here instructional process, because you give instruction. So that instruction then will be technical because it will be structured, or vertical because it will start from step one, step two, step three. That's why you see these terms that are indicated here. Instrumental is something that is following step by step. Technical is something that is technically driven, and then vertical, you see something like that. So when I have those, I'll then drill my learners with that. I'll tell them to step one, do this, step two, do this, step three. When they deviate, then I will have to punish them for that deviation. So deviation is not allowed if you take the content-centeredness, because the objective here is that learners should be able to produce this table as it was given to them by their teacher. All what then learners will do will just memorize the steps and then practice the steps. When they write the test, they will get 100%. The expectation is that they should get 100% because they know the steps. And then, but if I take the opposite to that, is that I will just go to my class knowing the outcome. The outcome is that learners should be able to produce a table using application software. Then I'll go to the class, to those computers. The class will have computers. Then I'll tell learners to say, today we have to produce a table. Therefore, please, in front of you, you have computers there. You must produce the table. I'll give you 20 minutes. And then what learners will do, those who are familiar with Microsoft Excel will jump to Excel. Those who are familiar with Microsoft Word, they'll jump to Microsoft Word. Those who are familiar with Access, they'll jump to Microsoft Access. But at the end of this exercise or activity, learners will be able to produce different tables from different application software. So now what I'll do then as a teacher after 20 minutes, I'll go around and look for those who have used from those who have used Microsoft Excel, I'll pick up one. And those who have used Microsoft Excel, I'll pick up one again. Those who have used Microsoft Word, I'll pick up one. So you see, I have 3 of them now. Then I'll ask each one of them to demonstrate, to show us how they've generated the content in order to achieve the outcome, because they've already achieved the outcome. So after achieving the outcome, which means there's this specific content which they were using from their experience to achieve the outcome. In this case, the outcome is a table. So I will then push them like that. So now that they've designed the table, they've shown the class how the table is designed, then learners will have to choose which of these 3 programs is suitable when they design their table. Then for me, it will be okay. Whichever program they use will be okay. Then the question then to you is that, which of these 2 do you prefer? Which of these 2 do you like? But I know a social acceptable norm is that you will simply say you like this one because it's learner-centered and is outcome-driven. But it also has its own shortcomings as much as it has its own strength. It has its own strength and weaknesses. Therefore, use it when it is suitable, when the time is right for you to use it. And this other one too, use it when the time is right to use it. Personally, for me, I prefer someone who will then marry the 2 approaches, who will be able to accommodate learners who enjoy who will enjoy the learner-centeredness and those who will enjoy the content-centeredness. Therefore, when you teach, then you'll be taking a pragmatic position, which is combining these two into a nice model for you to teach. So I'm then asking you to say, you know, when you teach, try to marry these two, learn the strength of this one and the strength of this one. So when you see these terms are given to this approach, and all these terms here are also given to this other approach. So when you see one of them, you must know that, oh, it's taking the outcomes-based or the competence-based curriculum. And if it is this side, it is performance curriculum, which is the content-based. Then you go according to that. So how do you do that? You first ask, who are you teaching? Is it someone who will need this or need this? Therefore, you combine the two. How can I combine this if I have to teach my learners how to create a table? I may start with this one, give them step by step. I take them to finish it. When they have mastered this table, I'll simply say to them, now that you know how to draw a table, you will then have to draw any other table using any application software of your choice. Then they will start to take the outcomes-driven approach. But when I give them, I'll give them through the content-driven approach. So I am combining these two so that those who learn better from this side will benefit, and those who will learn better from this side will also benefit. So they are equal. So what we call that pragmatic approach in doing it. So in other words, we use what is working for us according to that context. Because remember, this one is helping us to socialize. This one is helping us to get a qualification. So we need both. We need to socialize sometimes. At the same time, we need to have some qualification, you see. So that's why these are indicated here. Therefore, in your case, then make sure that when someone is asking you to say, I want quality education, you must first ask, who defined that quality and why? Then you take it from there. Because someone who will define the quality from this position is different from someone who will define quality from this other position. Therefore, they are not the same. Therefore, you need to deal with them according to their position. So read the situation and go according to the situation. And then you will then be able to self-actualize, and you have higher level skills in your development if you can marry these two to take the neutral position. But if you become a victim of this or a victim of this, I'm telling you, your teaching may exclude or discriminate against certain students or certain learners. So balance the two. So how these approaches are approached in terms of the reason, if you take this traditional approach or content-centered approach or performance curriculum, that one, the reason there is to make sure that you study that, you get your qualification. So mastering the content, which is prescribed here internationally, will lead to the qualification. But if you prioritize this one, it means you may be learning to be able to socialize with other people, to debate, to defend yourself without necessarily following a specific discipline that may help you to interrogate your activities, you see. That's what is happening there. So in terms of pedagogy, this side is what we call talk and talk, or others would say is collective chanting, where students are giving you answers as if they are singing. When you ask them what is soul, then they will have to sing the da 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 in a form of a chorus. So all those methods are coming from this side where learners are learning to make sure they get the qualification. But when you come this side, you promote something like grouping, you group them. And then when you come this side, learners don't have that such voice, because what you have is a prescribed content, which is internationally recognized. Therefore, what these learners should do, they should master the prescribed content in order to pass. So when they pass, they will pass because they've mastered the prescribed content. But this side, on the other side, you will see that here learners have, remember my example where they were given a table. They've managed to produce table for themselves. Then the teacher was just a facilitator, facilitating what was happening. But this side, the teacher was instructing them on what to do. That's why it's called, the teacher is an instructor this side. When it comes to assessment, this side, under the qualification side, is summative assessment. Because what is happening here is that assessment is looking for what your learners are cognitively missing. So those who are missing some part of the content, they will fail, because this side, the testing is for what is still missing. They focus on the absence, what is still missing cognitively. So if, for instance, you achieve 90%, you may have the 90%, but what will happen then is that other people, your teacher will still start to say, but let's look at how you missed the 10%. So this 10% is a big deal this side, because we're given a full body of content which we are supposed to master, and then after mastering it, you have your 100%. But this side, all what they do, they just look at what we have achieved. They use something like peer assessment or formative assessment, because all what they are establishing here is what you have achieved. What you have achieved will determine how they promote you. But this side, whatever you have achieved, whether it's 40%, is 50%, is good enough, because it's indicating that we have mastered the general competency. So that competency is the one that will help you to be promoted to the next level. So that is the competency that you need to be able to master there. So from there, from mastering that, you will be guided by the objectives. And then this side, you will be achieving the outcomes. So whose objectives are these? Are teachers' objectives. And then whose outcomes are these? Are learners' outcomes. Learners will achieve the outcomes when the teachers achieve the objectives. Then when it comes to the issue of platform for learning, this side you need a class, you need to be in a class. But this side you can learn anywhere, wherever you go, you can learn. It doesn't matter whether it's online or this and this. So there are no boundaries in terms of your platform for learning. But this side, there is a clear platform for learning that one has to deal with and then have it. So in terms of ideology, this side we follow a bureaucratic ideology. What is bureaucratic ideology? It's a structured ideology that one has to achieve following step by step, like the example I gave you in terms of creating a table. You follow step by step until you are done with what you are doing. But this side, you may start anywhere. There's no necessary structure, but you can, as long as you achieve the skills to achieve the outcomes, that will be good enough. So, but how then do we generate this so-called content for what we are teaching? Content of what we are teaching is coming from research. This side, you need to generate it from a specific discipline. If it is mathematics, it will be mathematics discipline. So when you have that, you will have to research it and get it wherever you can get. And then from there, you will then be able to deal with these issues according to your needs. So here they use this generation of school knowledge or scientific knowledge, which is the prescribed content according to your discipline, is coming from research. You conduct research, you generate it. At the same time, if you were to come from the everyday knowledge, which is common sense knowledge, you can get that from conversation with other people, your friends, TV, etc., etc. So it's not that structured because you can get it anywhere. Wherever you go, you can get it from there. That's what then is called everyday knowledge. So, for example, when you read other chapters, you will see how everyday knowledge has been generated in South Africa, especially during curriculum 2005, since 1998. So this what then means is that if you are dealing with cows, you are milking cows, so your lesson will be around, your teacher will bring the issues of how to milk the cows, and then you go according to that in your teaching, in your learning. You learn on from how to milk the cow. So whether then you upgrade it to understand the functions of the milk that that is produced by the cows, that is immaterial, because this side, all what they are worried about is the oral part of what you are doing. So this side, information is always written down. If you talk to someone, you phone someone this side to say how this thing is happening, they will simply say, please say that in writing. So when you say it in writing, it means you are following school knowledge. You are driven by school knowledge, which has to do with facts from research and taken from national or international curriculum. But this side, it's taken from personal views, local people, just opinion of the people. You don't even have to look for it because it may not be published anywhere. Therefore, it's just there like that. But and even the content there is just coming from community. Remember when these learners were producing the table, they were able to produce the table, but you did not teach them how to produce the table, because they took that from the experience of their community, family, etc., etc. So people come to education with something that they have achieved as part of their experience. So they are not empty vessels, but they have something. So if you take then the issue of everyday knowledge, it means we'll acknowledge that everyday knowledge and then you use it in your teaching. But remember, both of them are good and bad. Therefore, you need to know the strength of each of these approaches. So in South Africa, then what has been happening while we're moving from content-centered approach to competence-based approach, which is outcomes-based, we were forced by donors, because people were giving us some handout, and then we started to say, let's move to everyday knowledge and talk about what we know best. And then we have integrated curriculum where we started to say we combine mathematics with technology and science. So we had to combine that into one learning area called just one learning area which was combining these three subjects. So in other words, if you have learned something from mathematics which is applicable to physics, then you just have to respond to that as if you are doing mathematics, although you are doing physics, because these were one learning area. But if we were to go for the content-centeredness, each subject is standing on its own. Formula for mathematics may not be used for physics because those disciplines are advanced. They are advanced in such a way that the formula from this other one may not be applicable in this other one. Therefore, you cannot use it. It is impossible to use it because it is too advanced. The problem that we are trying to solve using this, which was borrowed from somewhere, is too advanced. Therefore, you cannot use it there. And then we also have that the call from the World Bank, where there was a demand that we should accommodate everyone. Then we also wanted to improve the quality of education, and we also wanted to promote the so-called active learning or active learners using participatory and individualized mode of learning. So World Bank demanded that in 1999. So in terms of our progressive ideology, we were talking about vocational education approaches that will help us to professionalize what we are doing, and then we bureaucratize it. So in other words, we structure it, and then the issue of differentiation, where you treat people according to their strength. So in other words, you run away from one side fit all, which is the case with the content-centeredness, which is performance curricula. So those are the issues. But what the World Bank in 1999 indicated here, it asked to say that whenever you deal with quality education was defined on the basis of these 8 points. Number one, we needed well-motivated students. And number two, well-trained teachers. We should have well-trained teachers. We also needed to have material or resources. So we wanted to have our schools as well-resourced schools. And then also the curriculum was supposed to be revised all the time in order to include knowledge, skills, values, and attitude as part of what we're doing, but building from our local knowledge. So local knowledge was important as the basis of what we wanted to achieve. And then number five, that we needed education that was going to be gender sensitive, health sensitive, so that for the sake of our learners. That's what we needed there. And number six there, so that was the curriculum that was going to be driven by outcomes, but making sure that those outcomes are categorized into knowledge, skills, values, and attitude. And then we wanted also to promote participation from different people, that people must participate. So NGOs and everyone who is interested in our education should be able to participate. That's why they call this thing participatory governance and management. And then the respect of engagement was also important. Engagement of our local communities was important. So this is the definition of World Bank about what we wanted to achieve in South Africa. But the main question then will be to say, what then caused the failure of these reforms? These reforms they keep on failing because of these 5 points. Number one, subject content knowledge is a function of self-actualizing and also critical thinking. But in all these reforms, we were missing these issues that are the basis of what we wanted to achieve. Therefore, as a result of that, missing the content, we were pushing the outcomes. So those outcomes were limited because others were just teaching us how to define. You know, when you define something, you may memorize it, but it doesn't mean that you may design it. You may design while you only know how to define it. So we need high skill level of development in order to make sure that we self-actualize, and then we are able to deal with the issue of promoting critical thinking. So when those are happening, then it is then easy that we are able to design our own. Remember, when we teach our students, when our learners in school, we are teaching them to go to university. Let's teach them in such a way that they will go to research-intensive university where they will learn how to design what they are doing. Therefore, in doing so, we need content as much as we need the outcomes, but the content should inform the outcomes that we need for the high skill level of those development. And then also, these reforms are failing again because our donor organization are demanding too much. They are demanding what we may not have sometimes, you see, because they promise us better education, then we end up borrowing policies from different countries. When we borrow those from those countries, for instance, we borrow the curriculum from the knowledge of curriculum from a developed country. So when that developed country is performing well, we'll think that will perform well. Yet in our case, we are under-resourced. Most 80% of our schools are under-resourced. Therefore, comparing yourself with the countries where about 90% of their schools are well-resourced, then is committing suicide on its own. That's why they fail. And then we're also pushed by that dominating language of saying we need child-centered, student-centered or learner-centered approach, which is constructivism or social constructivism. But what we are doing, we're practicing it with superficial knowledge of doing it. We did not have that, we did not understand the strength of that so-called competence-based curriculum or outcomes-based curriculum. So what we did then, we were following the traditional way of doing it based on our cultures and that with limited knowledge. Remember when I started to indicate these two approaches, I said, try to marry them to produce your own, to design your own position of teaching, which will combine both of them. So now in our case, when we are giving the content-centered approach into our curriculum, we will leave whatever goods or advantages that we may have from competence-based curriculum. Or when we are given a competence-based curriculum as our curriculum, then we will then throw away whatever we may have as a strength of performance curriculum, which is content-centeredness. So that's what is affecting what we are doing. Then that's why these reforms keep on failing. Because remember, 1998, we removed Christian national education which was dominating in South Africa, which was a prescribed curriculum of South Africa. And then we were given curriculum 2005, which was then revised later to national curriculum statement or revised national curriculum statement. So we had all those reforms, but look at it today. From 2012, we have moved from the competence-based curriculum, which is which was taken from that curriculum 2005. Now we moved to CAPS, which is curriculum and assessment policy statement. CAPS is content-centered, it's a content-centeredness curriculum. So it's following performance curriculum, which is driven by content. So that's why you can see the content is prescribed clearly. And then we also have some objectives there, which are specific aims and the curriculum aims. But nowhere is indicating the outcomes, because the outcomes are represented by specific skills. But because this is a performance curriculum, which is content-centered, we don't call them the outcomes, but they are there. But it's just that they're hidden behind the specific skills. They are specific skills. But when you see the keywords that are used there, you can see that those are keywords for outcomes, where learners are given their goals to deal with their learning. So those were the issues there. So then the 5 methods that were then dominating, we did not master these, where we are talking about chalk and talk, practice questioning, or where we question them, but we did not take the strength of those reforms in order to generate them. Even CAPS today is also struggling, because the notion of competence-based curriculum, which was a curriculum 2005, driven by OBE, which is outcomes-based education. The language is still there. Whether you move to this side, teachers will still speak the language of the previous curriculum, while you are demanding the change of curriculum. Why? Because teachers don't position themselves in a situation where they demand to understand the performance curriculum as much as they understand the competence-based curriculum. So when they talk about child-centeredness, and then you start to say, okay, what is the strength of that? Let me take the strength of that, so that when I need it, I'll use it. Again, when now you talk about content-centeredness or teacher-centeredness, I must also be able to draw from there and use that according to its strength. So none of these two is innocent, because each one of them will come with its own strength and weaknesses. So what should we do then? Let us work according to the strength of this and strength of this in our teaching. That's when we will be able to find our identity, and we will be able to self-actualize and teach according to what the need that is coming across us. But at the moment, majority of our teachers, because they don't reflect on what they are doing to see how much of performance they have and how much of competence they have, they just teach like one size fits all. You will see in this book, when you read this book more, we'll come to other parts that will show you. But here I was just introducing these terms so that you know these terms. When you come across these terms, you are able to deal with them, especially when you see that difference here to say we have school knowledge versus everyday knowledge. How do you generate everyday knowledge? How do you generate school knowledge? And then when you go back there, you have these categories to say what is the reason for this content-centered approach versus that of a competence-based curriculum. What is the reason? The reason this side is to give you skills for you to socialize, so that even if it means you don't have facts, but you must be able to defend yourself, socialize with different people, different communities. But this, when you need a qualification, you jump to come this side, and then you will be able to do this nicely. But the terms that I displayed here for you, these are the main terms that you will come across in your career, where people will start to define curriculum as a plan for teaching. It means it's a document that we are following in our plan. But this side, when you define it from the outcomes driven, you will start to say it's a plan of, because we are talking about experiences that are generated from your learners, and then you have the new content from the learners. But what is important here is to always start to say, who am I teaching? Who is teaching? And then you go according to the strength of those. When those people are teaching, make them aware that they have issues of outcomes as much as they have the issues of content that need to be mastered. Then the outcomes need to be achieved. So when we teach according to those bases, that's where we are able to do justice in our education. So you will then remember them, that they are like this. All the time when you see one of these, you will know where it's come from, and then you deal with it accordingly. What is the main aim here of combining these two? Is to make sure that you are able to answer the question, who requires this, or who needs this, and why? Then that person whose needs are addressed will be able to self-actualize and acquire high-level skills of development. That's what then will be happening. With those indications, ladies and gentlemen, I would then like to stop there and simply say, please review it and read the document. Keep on reading, read and read and read and read. Then you will then be able